My name is Jessie Ace. I'm part of a group of enabled warriors that you've probably never heard of. We're fighting back against our invisible illness and taking the dis out of disability. We don't give sympathy to our symptoms. They enable us to be the warrior that we are. If you ask doctors and nurses, they'd say what we're doing is impossible. But pushing the limits of our conditions is something that we have to break through every single day. So we push the limits. We are mentally strong. We can do anything. The question is, how far can we push those limits? This podcast will give you the answers. I'm Jessie Ace, and this is the Disabled to Enabled podcast. So on our show today, we have a true warrior, everybody. After her diagnosis in 2008, she puts aside her own health issues to help others and raise awareness. She's worked super hard in the Asian community where disability is often discriminated against. And she volunteers with many MS charities, even winning Volunteer of the Year 2013. Can I get a whoop for that? Woo! Outside of volunteering, she writes the Asian Quarterly MS newsletter, MS and Disability Awareness and magazines, and she also is very active playing hockey and attending regular zumba classes, with or without your sister. That's another topic. So on top of it all, she's even been on People's Strictly Come Dancing. Oh my goodness, enabled warriors, please help me in welcoming Trishna Bharadia, everybody! Woo! Hey Trishna, how are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. As I've just been telling you, I've had my coffee today, so I'm feeling a little bit jittery. Yeah. So anyway, can you tell us more about the kind of work that you do and the kind of articles and blogs that you write, and just tell us more about your mission?
So basically it started when I was diagnosed. So I was diagnosed with MS back in 2008. I'd been experiencing symptoms for about 3 to 4 years previously, but it wasn't until 2007 when I lost the feeling down one side of my body that what I call my path to an MS diagnosis actually started, because before then my symptoms were being put down to other things. And then I was given this diagnosis in May 2008, and I was essentially handed this life-changing diagnosis, and I was just sent away. I wasn't given any kind of information, no support, no signposting as to where to look for reliable information. And as a family, so myself, my parents, my sisters, we felt as though suddenly our lives had changed, but we were then thrown into this black hole where there was a complete lack of information. And so as obviously we went through a very steep learning curve, and I thought to myself, well, if I'm going through this, lots of other people must be going through this as well, and this isn't right. People shouldn't be having to deal with a diagnosis and then struggling to find the information and support that they need. So I'm one of those people that I believe that if you want to see change happen, you have to be part of that change. You have to get up, you have to do something.
Absolutely.
So initially I got involved with Asian MS, which is one of the support groups that works under the umbrella of the National MS Society in the UK. And I started basically volunteering for them, ended up sitting on the committee, and I became to all intents and purposes, basically their communications officer. So I created the quarterly newsletter, because for me, so writing the newsletter I was basically creating a publication that I wish that I'd had when I had been diagnosed.
Yeah.
And so it was full with research, with events that were happening, ideas for fundraising, tips and advice from other people who are affected by MS, whether that's somebody who had MS themselves or carers. I remember that, during the summertime, we would often have a series of travel blogs. People who'd gone on from the membership who'd gone on holiday and had either good or bad experiences, to do with disability assistance, maybe traveling with medications and all that kind of thing. So it was basically, I wanted to create something which was going to be informative and, you know, help to educate people within, you know, the Asian MS community. And then from there, that sort of led on to other things. So I write for a living. I have a full-time job. I work as an analyst and translator. So writing is one of the professional skills that I have. And I thought, well, and I really enjoy it as well. And I thought, well, the best thing to write about is topics that you're passionate about. So I thought, well, where else can I, you know, write and, you know, share my experiences and help to create, like I said, that information that I wish that I'd had. So I started to write for MS Matters, which is the MS Society magazine, New Pathways, which is the MS UK magazine, which you can see you've got a cover on your wall there. Also some of the disability related magazines, so Disability Horizons, which is an online magazine for people with disabilities. And then various organisations asked me to start blogging for them as well. So again, MS Society, I wrote some blogs for Sue Ryder, for Scope, and it's gone from there. And then, you know, it's become one of the main mediums for me to really carry out my, you know, my patient advocacy work, along with the public speaking and the content review, the sort of co-creation, the content reviewing, and all of that. It's just one of those things which, you know, like I said, I enjoy. And there's sort of I'd say probably three main areas where my advocacy work has sort of taken me down. So you've got the writing, you've got co-creation, which is basically it's being involved in the creation and development of projects, of information, of support, and of services. So, for example, I helped to develop a 6-week Living Well with MS course. I co-developed that with Sue Ryder.
Wow. Nice.
Again, and it was something which it was about filling an unmet need, filling a gap in services, because by this time I'd already been diagnosed for a while. But what happened was, so I'd actually got involved with Sue Ryder because I'd been awarded one of their Southern Women of Achievement Awards. And during the award ceremony, a couple of people from Sue Ryder stood up and gave some information about the charity. Now, I'd always associated Sue Ryder with hospice care, so mental illness, essentially. What I didn't know, and which I found out during this evening, was that Sue Ryder also provides neurological care. They have neurological centres in the country. So I sat there and I thought, wow, I'm a very well-informed by now, a very well-informed and very engaged person with MS. How do I not know this? So I then said to Sue Ryder, I said, look, let's work together because there is an unmet need here, which I'll talk about in a minute. But also it will be a way of helping them to promote their services locally, to say, hey, look, we provide neurological services.
Yeah.
And so what this unmet need was that by this time I'd been diagnosed for a while. And what I found was that there's an assumption that when you have any chronic condition, once you've been diagnosed for a while, there's this assumption that somehow you know it all and that you're able to cope. And you know how to navigate, for example, the various systems like the benefit system or the NHS, etc. But with something like, particularly like MS, where every single relapse could be completely different, it could be that you're doing fine for, I don't know, 7-8 years, you're managing your symptoms well, you know what support and services you need, then bang, you're hit with a relapse that completely throws you a curveball.
Yeah.
And you don't know how to access services that you might need. You don't necessarily know which, in the hospital, whether you need to access a specific physiotherapist, whether you need to access mental health services, a continence nurse, etc., etc. you might suddenly need to have adaptations done to your house. Well, if you've not needed that in the however many years that you've been diagnosed, it shouldn't be assumed that you automatically know this.
No.
And while there's lots of newly diagnosed courses out there, what the Sue Ryder Living Well with MS course was about, it was providing that support and that sort of educational resource for people who've been diagnosed for a while and who potentially might be falling through the cracks, who want to be able to live better independently, but people just aren't necessarily knowing where to go. And I think that's a really good thing about co-creation, is that it's almost always about meeting those unmet needs, because you have the relevant stakeholders involved right from the very beginning and working together. You identify what it is that the patient communities need very, very early on, whereas I've been involved in projects before where they've said, oh, we'd really like to involve you with this project. They've already developed the entire project and the whole concept and what they want to do, and they say, oh, so what do you think about it? And sometimes I'll have the awful task of saying, well, actually, I don't think this is something the patient community wants or needs. So you've just spent all this time, and actually, I'm not sure that this is going to work.
Yeah.
So
just stop whatever you're doing and just start all over again and listen to me this
yes.
time.
Yeah, and it's something which particularly within the healthcare system, within industries, so pharmaceutical companies, health tech companies, medical device companies, is something which they are increasingly recognizing the importance of, but we've still got a long way to go in terms of getting things right. Having said that, I enjoy all the parts of my work, but when you have a project and you're involved right from the beginning and you have an input into the entire development and see it right through to the very end, there's just something really just satisfying about that. It is something which I really do enjoy doing, along with obviously the writing and the public speaking, just different aspects. So yeah.
It's amazing as well, because you are considerably younger than the majority of people that are in this sector. Because I don't know if you found out.
What do you think I am? It's always really nice when people think I'm quite young.
You look really young, so you must be young. But
so I was diagnosed in 2008 and I was aged 28, so everyone can do the maths.
So you're not that old. Come on. Oh my god. So we mentioned earlier that you did the People's Strictly a little while ago.
Yes.
Now, how on earth did that come about? And tell us the whole story, because I'm so
So the People's Strictly happened. You can blame my sister, my younger sister. We loved the show. So from September through to December, Saturday night, that's what we do together. And we've watched it avidly throughout the years and have always sort of sat there, and the number of times I said to myself, gosh, you know what, I wish I was a celebrity just so that I could do Strictly. Forget about everything else, I just want to be able to do Strictly. And in 2015, so they started looking for people in 2014. What the BBC wanted to do, they wanted to do a special 4-part series in aid of comic relief.
That's right.
Yeah. And what they were looking for was, they were looking for people who were non-celebrities, but people who had overcome adversity in their life, various challenges, people who'd done community work, who'd done lots of charity work, and also people who were fans of the show, because they said, well, look, this is like every Strictly fan's dream, basically. Even people, so I've even spoken to people who aren't even necessarily huge fans of Strictly, but have said they would love to do the show.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things. I think everybody has a dancer inside of them that's just wanting to break out. It's just a question of, you know, whether they have the confidence, whether, you know, what type of dance and things like that. So I think it's definitely it's definitely one of the reality shows that I think really appeals to a wide selection of people, even people you would never necessarily think would be fans of the show. Yeah, exactly.
Sparkles.
So yeah, so they were looking for, like I said, for non-celebrities. It was the first time that they were ever doing it, so it was a bit of a sort of a jump into the deep end for the BBC as well, because they had no idea whether this would work or not. And my younger sister, Anisha, saw that they were looking for people to take part, and the whole application process was secret. So anybody who was being nominated had to be nominated by somebody, and that somebody wasn't allowed to tell the nominee.
Oh.
It was all done in secret, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know how the family managed to keep it a secret from me. We're a very open family, so when my sister kept getting these really mysterious phone calls and kept going into the other room, like where every time she got a call on her mobile, I was just like, why are you going into the other room? And I started to get really paranoid, thinking, oh, you know, what is it that she's talking about? She doesn't want me to hear. She's talking about me and things like that. And so, so for about, gosh, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks, she knew that I had been chosen, and my parents knew that I'd been chosen. And they had to keep it a secret. And then they put on this, it was a Zumba DVD recording, but it was fake. So Anisha, my sister, she's a Zumba instructor, and she said to me, because she also knows the kind of person I am. As a writer, and also in my job, I have to do a lot of research. So she knew that if she said to me, oh, look, you know, there's this Zumba DVD recording happening, I've heard about it through the Zumba Instructors Network, she knew that I would then look at the place where we were going, I'd have a look online to see if I could find any details. And the BBC went to so many lengths to make sure that all of the nominees didn't find out basically what was happening. And so on the night, I had a really long week at work. It was Friday night, and I said to my sister, I said, I really don't feel like, you know, going out tonight. Let's just stay at home. I'll sit in my pajamas, watch a movie, have some ice cream. She was like, no, we're going. Eventually, it ended up taking my mum calling home and saying to me, for once in your life, listen to your mum. You're going out, you know, you don't get the opportunity to go out with both your sisters together very often. She said, you're going to go out whether you like it or not. Literally just before we were leaving, Anisha said to me, she said, look, I know you're planning to like just stay at the back and hide, but just put a little bit of makeup on, you know, just in case they get some shots of you. And afterwards I was like, thank God you told me that, because it wasn't just I was going to hide. Literally, they put me right in the centre. So when we got there, they said, okay, we're going to arrange everyone and things like that. And I'd seen like things which looked a bit odd, but out of context, you just thought, you kind of say, oh, that's a bit odd, and then you just move on. So it's like when I got there, nobody had bottles of water with them. I was just, these people are hardcore. Like, I do a Zumba class and I'm drinking water after the first song, kind of thing. And literally there was nobody, and nobody had towels, and there was people wearing like these really pretty sparkly like high-heeled shoes, and I was like, that's not practical for Zumba. It looks really lovely. And they just thought, oh, we're going to be in a video, so we'll just dress up a bit. And you put those things out at the back of your mind, which obviously then you think to yourself after it all happened, I was just like, oh, why did I not see that coming? So yeah, they did this fake recording, and in the middle of it, Natalie Lowe, who's one of the professional dancers from Strictly, and Lewis Smith, who's an Olympic gymnast and who won I can't remember which year now, but he won Strictly in, I think it was 2 or 3 years previously. I can't remember the exact season. And they came out, and I basically looked like I was going to have a heart attack. So there's still clips on YouTube, on the BBC YouTube channel. So if the listeners, the audience, want to go and have a look, just type in Trishna Bharadia Strictly or something like that, and you'll be able to see me looking completely surprised.
I will put a link to that in the description, don't you worry.
And it was just brilliant. I mean, it was the hardest thing that I've ever done, physically, mentally, emotionally, but it was also just the most amazing experience. Not because obviously you had all the makeup, the beautiful dresses, you got the entire Strictly experience. I was paired with Ali Ashkonianets, who's just an amazing, not just an amazing professional dancer and teacher, but also an amazingly empathetic and sympathetic and understanding person, which is what I needed, because I didn't want to go on national television and make a fool out of myself, because, balance was off. I was having to dance in heels. I was given a jive, which is one of, probably next to the quick step, is probably the fastest,
very fast,
you have. And he understood that, but at the same time, he also understood that I wanted to push myself. I said, I didn't want this to be easy, because this is a once in a lifetime experience and opportunity. So I wanted to challenge myself. I also wanted to challenge the perceptions of what it's like to live with MS, because, where a lot of people have heard about MS, but don't necessarily know, exactly what's happening in the body, and how it can actually affect people on a day-to-day basis. And also there's an idea that MS automatically equals wheelchair, which, yes, in many cases, you can need to use a wheelchair. So there's a huge number of people who may never need to use a wheelchair or walking aids, but still have MS and have a lot of other symptoms. I mean, when I'm doing my presentations about MS, I often say to people, actually, the vast majority of symptoms for MS have nothing to do with mobility. No. And people are surprised, and you'll list all the symptoms, and mobility is literally just one out of a huge number. But it's because when your mobility is affected, that's what people see. That's what people automatically in their minds equate MS with being.
Yeah.
And so in terms of being able to basically go on national television, not just as a woman with MS, but an Asian woman with MS, to be able to challenge those stereotypes, being able to challenge those perceptions on a prime time, much loved, entertainment show, which was about getting the best out of people. It was about showcasing the best in us. I think it was a wonderful opportunity. And, after the show aired, I had people coming up to me in the streets to talk to me about MS. People were coming up to my parents and asking, how's your daughter doing? How, is she doing okay? And talking to them about MS. I have people from within the MS community and also from other chronic disease communities saying that it had seen the challenges that I faced and how I was overcoming them. It helped them to also either become more active or become involved in advocacy and voluntary work, start the conversations that they needed to have with their family and friends, because it suddenly made things much easier to be able to say, okay, so what I'm going through is what Trishna on television, that girl who was on Strictly and who had MS, that's what I'm going through. And yes, my symptoms might be slightly different, but these are the challenges that I'm facing. And, you know, it makes it much easier to start talking about these things. Well, so I really believe that we need to talk and we need to explore the issues openly, because if you don't, then people aren't mind readers. You know, why should we assume, you know, as people with chronic illness, why should we assume that people will automatically know what support we need? We shouldn't. It's our job to tell them and to explain to them and say, look, this could help me, or this is how I'm feeling. There has to be a responsibility from the person with the condition. And in order to do that, having, you know, the various different conditions in the spotlight and on the television, whether it's through entertainment shows like Strictly. I know that, you know, in the past few years, actually since the People's Strictly, because there was, so Cassidy Little was an former Marine who had one leg amputated. And since People's Strictly, they've also had Paralympians on the main show. Yeah. And again, opened up conversations. It's brought disability into the mainstream spotlight. Having people with disabilities and various chronic illnesses in soap operas, again, it can help to open up those conversations. I'm not saying that they always necessarily get it right, you know. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say.
However, if it gets people asking questions, if it gets people going on, for example, you know, if it's MS, on the MS Society's website to find out more, if it gets people thinking about symptoms that they might have been having, and go and make that appointment with the doctor.
Again, that connection, it makes sense.
Exactly. And, you know, there's lots of information out there now because of the internet, because of the various organizations that are out there. So if people understand what's going on in their own bodies, or, for example, they might have, I don't know, a brother or a sister or a mum or a dad or a friend who they recognize certain symptoms in them, whatever, you know, condition it might be, because they've seen something on the television, then I think that can only be a good thing. And I mean, so generally TV programs do try, you know, they do their research, they do try to make sure that things are being portrayed in a realistic way.
And then in the same time, they've kind of got to make it into a really empowering, what's the word, compelling story.
Exactly.
What you're going to watch, that's the thing. So they kind of dramatise it a little bit, but then they kind of...
Yeah, and also often speed things up as well, because obviously the timeline in a soap is very different to the real timeline. And also, particularly with, for example, something like MS, where every single person's experience of MS is different. Yes, there will be some commonalities, but you will never get two people with MS who are the same. So if you want to portray MS on the television, you're never going to please everyone, because it was somebody who says, well, that's not my MS. So again, I take the attitude, it might not be your MS, but there will be common things that various people with MS will be able to identify with that story, in which case, again, it's about starting the conversations, it's about, you know, getting those questions asked, and that's, to me, a good thing. The more we can get it out there, the better.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole controversy at the minute, isn't there, with celebrities coming out with their illnesses. And there's quite a lot of the MS community that are kind of like, oh, why are they getting so much attention with it? You know, why I have to live with this every day kind of thing. But I think it's a really good thing that they come out with these things, and they're raising awareness of it, and they're using their platform in a really good way. Like, you'd be more annoyed at them if you knew that they had this, but they wouldn't talk about it.
Yeah, and I think that you do need that big platform. I mean, obviously, very recently, the person that has been on everyone's lips has been Selma Blair.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would hope that what she does for raising awareness about MS will be the same as what Michael J. Fox has done for Parkinson's.
Yeah, brilliant.
I mean, the Michael J. Fox Foundation that he set up has done some amazing things when it comes
incredible.
to Parkinson's research.
Yeah.
So, I think the important thing is that when celebrities come out, they do it in an informed and sensitive way, so that people do learn. I have seen instances, not necessarily in MS, but in other conditions where the person in question actually isn't very informed. And I've seen a TV interview and they've actually been saying things which aren't correct.
Right.
And that's not good, because then you're giving out misinformation.
Yeah.
Or necessarily making it clear that this is the way that they are trying to deal with it, but potentially there may not be, evidence. Diet is one of them. A lot of people will say, well, this diet has really has either cured me or really helped me.
Yeah.
But can't necessarily back it up with the scientific evidence, which you can then start treading on some very sort of dangerous ground, because then people will say, well, if it helped that person, I'm going to do it, and it might not necessarily be the best thing for them if they've not, for example, sought medical advice beforehand, etc., etc. So I think it has to be, celebrities do have to be, they have to do things in a very, what's the word? In a responsible, that's the word. They have to do it very responsibly, and they have to understand that there are going to be people who are going to look up to them, and basically take what they're saying as gospel. And so you have to make sure that they are informed. And organisations like for example, the National MS Societies, in other disease areas, you have, Parkinson's UK, you've got the MND Association, etc., etc. They can help because they can give briefings, they can help with, the education when it comes to the scientific side of things, especially if, most of these people, even, myself, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a medic, I'm not medically qualified, but I've learned about the medical and scientific side of things through my advocacy work. So now I'm very comfortable, very confident going, for example, on the radio or television and talking about MS in a medical or scientific way. Not everybody necessarily has that right from the very beginning. So having that education, I think, is really important if you are going to go into the media and start talking about a condition on the radio or in the television or in the press.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Because there is so much misinformation out there, like you say, and there is a lot of people saying, oh, well, this works for me, so it's going to work for everybody. And that's not necessarily true, because diet, in terms of diet, let's say, food affects people in different ways, So it's a really tricky thing. And I think the one main thing, and we'll get onto your advice in a moment, but the one main piece of advice that I could give someone that was newly diagnosed would be to really look after your mindset and your mental health, because I think mental health is the most important thing that can get you through anything, especially a diagnosis of invisible illness.
Definitely. And I think actually there's a huge lack of mental health support for people who have chronic illness in general. There's so much emphasis, particularly at the point of diagnosis, so much emphasis on dealing with those physical symptoms.
Yeah, but it's not the mental symptoms.
Yes, and the whole, I mean, it's essentially your life has changed. I mean, they talk about the 5 stages of grief, and it is like that. You go through the anger and the denial, and then the negotiation, and then the acceptance. And if you're not properly supported through that, then that can have a huge impact on the rest of your life with this chronic illness.
Absolutely.
And I know that, well, particularly in the UK, there's a huge amount of pressure on mental health services. You know, that's well known. But I do believe that if we're able to look after the mental health side of things, then some of the other things become much easier to cope with.
Yes.
Because, I mean, let's face it, when you're having, you know, if you're depressed or you're suffering from anxiety, everything becomes harder to cope with, let alone also dealing with, you know, your symptoms. And with something like MS, and also, again, many other chronic illnesses, depending on the symptoms, it can also be very socially isolating, which then can also feed in to mental health issues, because, you know, you're not necessarily getting out, you're not able to do the things that you've always done. You may not be seeing people as much. For example, if you don't have friends who live close by or who don't understand, if you've had to give up work, for instance, and all of those things, they feed into your overall mental health. So it's so important to make sure that if you feel like you're not coping mentally, that you do seek that support, and you do ask, and you keep pushing and pushing to make sure that that support is there. Like I said, it makes everything so much harder if it doesn't.
So what's the one piece of advice that you would give someone who is newly diagnosed?
So there's two things, really. First one is, don't be afraid to ask for help. So it can be difficult to ask for help, especially if you're very independent, but it can be extremely liberating, because instead of necessarily struggling, asking for help can enable you to do something. So I often call my parents my enablers, because, you know, and it was very hard. You know, I'm a fully grown woman, and I didn't envisage that I would be having to rely on my parents the way that I do. However, it has meant that I have been able to do all the things that I am doing. You know, having my full-time, people often ask me, how do you juggle having a full-time job with all the advocacy work that you do, having exercise, etc., etc.? It's because I have the support, and I know when I need to ask for help. So, you know, whenever I travel, you know, I travel all over Europe and the world, really, for, you know, speaking at conferences and stuff like that, I always have somebody come with me, because I know that I need the help and the support when I'm traveling. So yeah, ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. The other thing would be that there is no right or wrong way to cope with a diagnosis. Every individual is different. So whilst, yes, you can, for example, go onto Facebook groups and things, which are in many ways can be incredibly helpful. What isn't helpful is if you start comparing yourself, because it's not a competition, it's not a race, it's not about who is coping better than who. It's about sharing experiences and thinking, oh, well, this might actually help me in my situation. Or, you know, you see somebody who, you know, you might hear of somebody who has, you know, decided to start running marathons, for example, and you think to yourself, oh gosh, I can't do that. Instead of feeling like I can't do that, maybe think, well, okay, I may not be able to cope with running a marathon, but hey, how about if I start walking, or I do something different? So it's about taking inspiration. Now, whenever I'm doing, I do a lot of inspirational talks about my life with MS, and I always say to people that this talk isn't about me saying to the audience what they should and shouldn't be doing. It's about them listening to my experiences, listening to my journey, and hopefully taking away something that might help them. If there's nothing in there that they can relate to, that's fine as well. But it's some of the best pieces of advice that I had in the early days was from talking to other people with MS. And it's not that they were in exactly the same situation as I was. It's not that they were facing exactly the same issues. It was more that they had a certain way of coping with things. And I thought, oh, that's quite a nice way of doing it. Or that's really helped them. Maybe it might help me. Some things work, some things don't work. Just, we're all, nobody like practices life. And that's just the same way as, nobody knows how to live with a chronic illness.
No.
Have a rehearsal, so we're all learning all the time. I've been diagnosed now for 11 years and I'm still learning, and I still will be learning. It's so, and even at this point, 11 years on, there's still no right or wrong.
No. Just that's the thing.
No, exactly. It's just about, you have to make sure that you're happy, that you're as healthy as you can be, and you're doing what you can to help yourself. That's what I really believe.
And that's a really important thing as well that you said at the end, is you're doing everything that you can to help yourself. That is a really, really important thing, because I think that so many people with chronic illness get in this headspace of just like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And actually sometimes that's stopping you from actually doing anything. So it's about that mindset shift of actually going, well, do you know what, I can't do that aspect today, but I can do this. I'm grateful that I can do this today. That's a huge thing.
So that's actually one of the reasons why I ended up taking up Zumba and dancing, because I've always been a hockey player. I'd played hockey ever since I could hold a stick. We're a hockey family. Everyone in the family plays. My dad's still playing and he's in his 70s. Hockey is in our blood.
Yeah.
But it was becoming increasingly difficult to cope with going to training during the week and then having to work the next day. But then matches were wiping me out, and my reactions were becoming slower as my fatigue was getting worse. I ended up with a couple of really bad injuries. And when you're playing something like hockey, where you've got hockey balls and sticks flying around all over the place, you can't be slow, and also you can't be scared either. There is a certain mindset that you have to have when you play a game like hockey. And I had a couple of very bad injuries, and then the doubts started to creep in. Started to think, well, if my fatigue wasn't so bad, would I have potentially have got hit? I ended up in accident and emergency a number of times, and then it got to a point where my dad knew that if I called him on a Saturday afternoon when I was supposed to be playing hockey, he was just like, "You're at the hospital again, aren't you?" And it got to the point where I became scared when I was on the pitch, and I wasn't going in for tackles. I was avoiding the ball. That's silly when you're playing hockey. And so I thought, well, what can I do? Because I love sport. I always have, and exercise is a really important thing for me in terms of mental health. It makes me happy. And so with dancing and Zumba, you don't have a team relying on you, because this was the other thing. I started to feel very guilty that I was letting my team down, because I wasn't performing up to what I knew my standard could be. So, with dancing, it's very much, you make it what you want. I can be having a bad day with my MS, and I can still go, I can do what I can, and I come out and, you've had an hour dancing around to music. And that in itself, just listening to music that you enjoy, makes you happy. And I think it's one of the very few truly inclusive forms of exercise that there can be. So Anisha, my younger sister, is an inclusive dance instructor. And in one of the classes that she runs, it's at a disabled sports club. And in one class, I think there's about 3 or 4 of us who have MS, all with varying at varying stages of the disease. We have somebody with cerebral palsy. We have somebody who's an amputee. She's like something like 75, and she has one leg, and she does it from her wheelchair. We have somebody else who's paralysed from the chest downwards. And then we also have other people who, either don't have any health conditions or have other long-term health conditions which don't necessarily result in disability. And so, but the thing is that it's such a safe and non-judgmental space, and it's something that we can all do together. So, my mum, who is again in her 70s, she does it, and she's doing it in the same class as myself and my younger sister, and you have this whole range of ages, but we're all doing the same thing. And there aren't many sort of forms of exercise where you can do that, and it doesn't matter what age, what fitness level, what your physical ability is, you can all do the same class. And I think that's truly amazing.
That really
and needs to be, I believe that dance should be on prescription. We would be such a happier nation if it was.
That's so true. If we got rid of not got rid of, but as well as prescribing actual medication that you actually had this form of physical exercise, that would just be so life-changing for so many people.
Yeah, I also believe that they should put sunshine holidays on prescription as well, but I don't think that's ever going to happen.
I like that. Or maybe ice cream. Add that in.
I like that as well. But I think that, particularly in our family, so in our family, we're very much we're very experienced in the chronic illness arena. So I have MS. My identical twin sister was diagnosed with MS 3 years after me. My younger sister has ulcerative colitis, which was diagnosed, so she developed her first symptoms the year that I was diagnosed with my MS. I have a cousin with MS as well. So we've had to find these ways of, coming together and being able to help and support each other, and find ways to be able to enjoy each other's company as well. Because in many ways we have, I spend a lot more time with my family and my parents than I think the average, person my age does, because of the circumstances. And I know that Anisha would probably say the same thing.
Yeah.
Doing something like, for example, dance and zumba, which we can do together with our mum, it's nice because it gets us out of that environment whereby it's not easy when you have 2 people with serious chronic illnesses. Like I said, parents are they're not young anymore, and sometimes the frustrations can bubble over, and we're like any other family in that respect. So having those opportunities to be able to sort of come out and just let go and forget about those stresses and those frustrations and enjoy something together, I think is incredibly important. Is the support that carers need, and also for their mental health as well. It's really important that we don't forget that, because often there's so much emphasis on making sure that the person with the condition is doing okay. The needs and the requirements of the carers get forgotten about. When older carers, so like for example my parents, who are essentially looking after adult children, or where you have the young carers who are looking after, for example, one or other of their parents who might have a chronic condition or a disability. Those 2 very extreme ends of the spectrum, particularly, I think, need a huge amount of support and can often get, like I said, can get forgotten about. And we shouldn't, because at the end of the day, you know, I often say if the carer isn't doing well, then they're not going to be able to provide the right support for the person who needs the care.
Yeah, exactly. And I know this is kind of unrelated, but it just popped into my head for some reason. It's kind of like when you're on an airplane, they tell you to put your mask on before you look after someone else.
Yes.
You kind of, you have to look after yourself and your own mental health and how you're going to deal with it before you can kind of help somebody else with that.
Exactly. Which actually reminds me of a time when I was one of the few times that I was traveling long haul and all the oxygen masks fell down.
Oh no.
And it completely freaked me out. I was like, oh no. And then one of the cabin crew said, oh no, don't worry, we don't know why they just dropped down, but you don't need them. I was just like, oh my god, the oxygen masks, what do I do?
Oh god. See, that's what it's like to be clumsy when you're a pilot. You're just like, chat, like, oh no, that's the wrong button. Oh god, how do I sort this out? Oh god, no. Okay, are you ready for some super quick secrets?
Yes. Questions, not secrets.
Well, all right. Super quick questions, I guess.
Okay.
Anyway, this is the part of the show where we find out a little bit more about our guest today. Oh my goodness, are you ready? Are you ready? You think?
I think.
Okay, what is the most inspiring book that you have ever read?
I don't know that I've ever read a book that has completely inspired me. There are books which I've read, which I've then read repeatedly because I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So I would say my two favourite series of all time, Harry Potter.
Oh, legendary.
But also Anne of Green Gables.
Oh, okay.
So Gilbert Blythe was my first ever crush.
Oh, you've heard it now, Enabled Warriors.
Those are my two favourite series. And then there's been various books throughout the years, which are ones which, you know, if people say, can you recommend a book to me? I can't say that I've ever read a book that's inspired me, but that's also partly because I just don't get enough time to read these days. You know, as a kid, I just read avidly. You know, I would take out 10, 12 books from the library every other week and I would just devour them. But now the only time I really get to read is when I'm on aeroplanes.
Oh, I was going to say you travel quite a lot, don't you?
I do. So I'm asked to go and speak at conferences and events all over Europe. Also other parts of the world as well. I'm starting to go to, but Europe in particular. I mean, I feel very privileged in a way because I've been to countries that I would never have thought of going to. So that's when I either read or I listen to podcasts. That's that airplane thing to do.
Because you can listen to audiobooks as well, can't you?
Yeah, you can. I've never actually listened to an audiobook.
Here is something really cool. So, and Enabled Warriors listening, you can do this too. So if you want to try out any book, any audiobook, you can actually get your first audiobook for free if you go to audible.co.uk and you put in the code Enabled Warrior. What's the weirdest thing that you've ever done?
So I'd always wanted to go snowboarding. Never, despite the fact I don't even like the cold and the snow.
Favourite place that you've ever visited?
Switzerland. It's beautiful. If you ever get the chance to go, it is just the most picturesque place ever.
And they've got chocolate.
And they've got good chocolate. It's very expensive. It is a very expensive place, but it's well worth it. It's just breathtaking there. Awesome. And Berlin is a really, really nice city as well. So Berlin was, I think, one of my favourite cities.
Nice. I've got to go there. Okay, what's the scariest thing that you've ever done?
Scariest thing? Probably when I did the keynote speech at 10 Downing Street.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So I remember thinking, I'm glad that this is a solid lectern because I could see my legs were physically shaking. I was that nervous.
Oh, gosh, no.
It was for an MS Society reception that was being hosted by Samantha Cameron. And I mean, it was amazing. And I was just so honoured that I was given that opportunity. But I had Michelle Mitchell, who was then the MS Society's chief executive, on one side of me, Samantha Cameron on the other side of me, and then there was me. I was just like, how has this happened? I'm in 10 Downing Street. Samantha Cameron knows my name. She's introducing me. She was absolutely lovely. She actually gave me tips about how to make sure you always look good in photos, that's what I've taken away from that. Aside from the fact that it was amazing, amazing evening and just incredible. But yes, Cameron's tips on how to always look nice in photos.
Wow, I think that's another podcast in itself. I mean,
yes.
I feel like we really need to go into that, because that's very helpful. So where can other warriors find out more about you and what you do, Trishna? So
I'm on social media. That's one of that's the main way that I disseminate the stuff that I do. So I'm on Facebook, facebook.com, Trishna Bharadia 2015. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. My handles are at Trishna Bharadia. And I also have a YouTube channel as well, which I've literally just got my URL for. So basically it's youtube.com, I think it's / Trishna Bharadia. So I'm on YouTube as well. And, if you follow me on social media, you'll be able to see all the things that I'm doing. I also post about events that are happening that people might be interested in attending, opportunities that are coming up to potentially help make a change. So at the moment, for example, the European MS platform actually they're looking to put together a set of recommendations to help carers of people with paediatric MS. So people being diagnosed with MS in childhood, and they're looking to produce a set of recommendations to help support the carers. And they contacted me and they said, look, do you know anybody? So when things like that happen, I always put it on my social media. So there's things on Twitter and stuff asking, are you a carer for somebody with paediatric MS? So it's very much, not just myself, but there's other patient advocates out there. It's really great to follow them, because be a way of getting involved yourself. And also, I post things about research, about things that are going on in my life. So you'll find some dance videos there and things. So yeah.
Amazing. So just for everybody listening, can you repeat your handles again? I will attach them in the description at the top, but I can just...
So on Facebook, it's facebook.com / Trishna Bharadia 2015. Instagram and Twitter, my handle is at Trishna Bharadia. And YouTube, like I said, I think it's youtube.com / Trishna Bharadia.
It might just be search Trishna Bharadia, because I think they give you
Trishna Bharadia.
And for everybody listening as well, you can go back in the podcast and go and listen to Anisha's episode, because she was I can't remember what number she was, but she was quite a while ago. She was a few weeks.
Yeah.
So I'll link in the description of that as well, so you can go and listen to it. And awesome. So thank you so much for coming on here today. It's amazing.
Thank you for having me.
We've learned so much, I think, today, so it's really been great. So thank you so much for sharing all your experiences and things. And remember, warriors, stay enabled. Bye, Trishna.
Bye.
If you want to fight back against your invisible illness and help take the dis out of disability, then join the tribe on Facebook, facebook.com/enabled warriors. If you love this podcast, click that subscribe button and never miss another episode. And remember, warriors, stay enabled.